So tonight, I wanted to prepare us all for tomorrow, as we will be changing the category again from the person who is neither liked nor disliked to the person who is difficult. I spoke about the liberation of the mind by loving kindness. This being the liberation of mind from dosa, any form of ill will. So today I want to turn that and talk about the flip side of the coin, the ill will itself. Because, of course, this is what can come up in this category of the difficult person, the difficult being. So, dosa, the word in Pali, is one of the 3 unwholesome roots. And usually in English it's translated as ill will. And in Italian, I don't know. Aversion. That word is used in English as well. Also, anger, malice, irritation is a wide range of experiences. Anything that pushes away. So from mild irritation to rage. Also, anxiety, worry, fear. It is, of course, associated with opposites, attachment, wanting. So we might want a certain outcome or a certain experience and not want a certain other kind. So if we are concerned about the kind we don't want arising, then there is a lot of perseveration in the mind about that. It looks like dosa, but it's this mixture of wanting one thing and not wanting another. This is particularly obvious in states of anxiety or fear. But also hatred, anger. Because often, really strong anger can be associated with unacknowledged fear. So fear of a certain outcome or experience. And we might not even be aware of that. We just get mad. I wasn't so aware of this until one time, this was 20 years ago, I was working at IMS in Massachusetts. And I was driving the staff car, doing some kitchen errand, and came to this complicated 5-way intersection in the middle of Barrie, which is a small little town in Massachusetts. And all these little streets all come together with a main road going right through the middle of it. But somebody pulled out right in front of me and almost hit me. Or I almost hit them. They pulled out in front of me. And my first response was to yell, verbally yell, and do something with my hand that I'm ashamed to say. It was just this gut-level response. Just boom. There wasn't a moment of mindfulness in there. But of course, within seconds, what I became really aware of is the anger was only the brittle surface. Under it, I was terrified. So the more scared people are, the angrier they can get. And, of course, in the wider world, this is being used politically in really ugly ways right now. There are a lot of scared people out there on all sides of the political spectrum. And it plays out in our families and our relationships as well. So it really helps to be aware that these things are happening, that the anger is not the only thing going on. So in general, the qualities of our experience of dosa, the experience of the dosa mind, are experiences of hardness or brittleness. And I mean these as metaphors rather than physical states. The mind that is brittle, that breaks easily. The mind that is hard and unmoving. The mind that's tight, it's a very small space when we're angry. And we know these experiences as uncomfortable. But for some reason, it's very difficult for us to reflect about the dangers of anger, the qualities of anger that don't go anywhere. And this is because, as the Buddha said, anger with its poisoned root and honeyed tip.
Sì.
The part of anger that we tend to focus on, it's that honeyed part. It's the part that the ego is very, very strongly involved in. And it's very alluring. We're right. Right? You know?
Sì,
So if we nibbled at this honeyed tip, then the poison seeps in. And the Buddha speaks over and over again in the texts about the dangers of anger. It's said to be the most reprehensible of all the kilesas, the most dangerous of them. From the Tibetan tradition, Shantideva has some really pointed things to say about anger. And these are from the Bodhicharyavatara, so the way of the Bodhisattva. So he says, good works gathered in 1,000 eons, such as deeds of generosity or offering to awakened ones, a single act of anger shatters them. Those tormented by the pain of anger will never know tranquility of mind. Sleep departs them. They can never rest. Men of anger have no joy. They are forsaken by all happiness and peace. Yeah. It's a dangerous thing, anger. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the verses in the Anguttara Nikaya, there are many of them, many texts. The Buddha has a rather amusing way of describing the dangers of anger, because he turns it on its head and says, well, if you're angry, here are the ways that your enemy is gratified. Because if you're angry at an enemy, the enemy is wishing for you, oh, well, may he or she be ugly. Have you ever looked at in the mirror at yourself when you're angry? It's a really ugly face. So, may he be ugly? Well, okay. Number one, success. One's enemy wishes, may he sleep badly. He or she. And you know how it is when you're angry and you're really angry about something? You're tossing and turning and tossing and turning. You can't let it go and you cannot sleep. And the enemy wishes, may he or she not be successful. And when you're really angry, you can't be. Because you see in a perverted way, when you see through anger, you see what's harmful as correct and beneficial, and you see what's beneficial as harmful. So that's not a recipe for success. And then the enemy wishes, may he or she not be rich. And in the text it says, oh, if a really angry person, their riches are appropriated by the king. This is the one that, to me, the one thing in this particular text, I think, well, maybe not. But we go on. The angry person's enemy wishes, oh, may he not be famous. And it's true. If you are really angry, you lose reputation amongst good people. The enemy wishes, may he or she not have friends. And maybe you have friends, okay. But if you're really angry about something and you can't stop talking about it, your friends really don't want to hang around with you. They see you coming and go, oh no, here she comes. She's going to want to talk about that job she didn't get. She can't let go of it. And then finally, may he have a bad destination after death. And in Buddhist cosmology, this is pretty much guaranteed. If you die with an angry mind, you'll go to a bad place. And very basically, have you ever noticed how people who are very self-centered and kind of angry, narcissistic people are really just totally unhappy? Whereas open-hearted people, kind of the opposite personality, they're the happy ones. Anger is not a happy state. This is, it's not nuclear physics. This is our normal experience. And there's a text in the Anguttara Nikaya that likens somebody whose mind is angry as somebody whose mind is like a weeping wound or a running sore. It's not a nice image. Ugh. But because of that honeyed tip, we don't pay attention to that so much. because of the ego involvement, the selfing that goes on with anger, when we're really angry, the ego is really affirmed. We don't pay attention to these obvious things. They're really obvious. They're nothing. They're not a mystery. And the key here is really discernment, seeing and reminding ourselves of the dangers of anger, how it's disagreeable, displeasing to other people. They won't want to be around us. How it's just confusing and unpleasant to be angry. And how when we're prone to anger, people don't want to hang out with us because they think, oh, they might insult me or say something or do some harm to me. I just, never mind. I don't want to hang out with that person. So on a simple interpersonal level, if we remind ourselves of the danger of anger, this is very helpful for restraining following it. But also reflecting about the bigger danger of anger, if it's held onto and unexamined, how destructive it can be. Family feuds start with a moment of anger, and these can last for a long, long time. Not to mention wars. They all start with a moment of anger too. So in ourselves, we need to work with this, become comfortable with this, so that we don't feed it. And this is particularly true of some of us who tend to have the habit of anger that is more ingrained than in others. Because some of us are what are in Buddhist psychology are called dosa types. And in the Visuddhimagga it talks about dosa types. Actually, it's quite funny the way it talks about dosa types. About people who tend to respond with irritation or anger about anything that they encounter. How they seize upon trivial faults and don't see the good in things. And so somebody who is a dosa type, this is just conditioning, tends to walk into a room and see all the things that's, oh yeah, that. Couldn't they do something different with those curtains? You see all the things that bug you. So just as an illustration, I have to admit I'm a very strong dosa type. This is a specialty. 19 years ago now, Kamala Masters, a very dear friend, and I had gone to Burma.
Sorry, Kamala Masters?
And she's a very dear friend, and we had gone to Burma.
Ah, okay.
And it was the first visit for both of us to the Sagaing Hills, which is this beautiful range of hills next to the Irrawaddy River with pagodas all over. It's just a magical place. And we were staying at a big monastery that was just being developed. We were part of a group of foreigners that had gone to study the Abhidhamma there. And early on in our trip, we were walking out. It must have been the first day. I can't remember exactly when. We walked out the front gate, and there were the hills in front of us. And we just stopped and went, And the first thing that came out of my mouth was, it would be just gorgeous if it weren't for those 2 radio towers. Because what stuck out for me were these 2, like red and white metal radio towers that were on the top. One over here and one over there. And I'm like, they ruined it. Kamala, who is a self-professed greed type, said, what radio towers? She was fixating on the beautiful. I was fixating on the ugly. It's just the way the mind works. It was a very funny moment. And we still laugh about it. It's like, oh, wow, this is just like the way the mind is. So if you are a self-professed dosa type, if when you walk into a room you notice your mind is seizing upon things that are trivial but not the best, metta is said to be the best practice for you, metta bhavana. And what the Buddha says about how to work with anger is basically cultivate metta and just be patient. I read texts like that and the dosa mind comes out. Oh, come on, just give me some specifics, is what I tend to think. Okay, here are a few specifics. And I know you know them. So when dosa arises in the practice or in life, our first task is kind attentiveness. Friendly awareness, acceptance. Humor helps as well, especially if it's not something really charged, but like that moment of those radio towers, that humor really, it released it. We have to feel it. And this applies to any unwholesome mind state, but anger in particular is something we don't like to feel. So the mind tends to go away from that. It doesn't want to go there. And particularly if there's a lot of charge, there will be a lot of storyline and thinking that can attach to that feeling. So our task is to let that just keep going, chatter away, and go under that to feeling. With anger, this can be surprisingly difficult. I mean, it sounds very easy. It's simple to say. But it's so easy to get pulled into thinking about the situation endlessly, wanting to fix it, wanting to change it, wanting to work with it in a useful way, wanting to resolve it. Or perhaps somebody's harmed us. And then what happens is a lot of self-justification and self-pity. Let's face it. And we talk about the situation to ourselves over and over again, justifying how wronged we were, how bad they are, wishing the whole world knew how bad they are, and oh, poor me. So the kind attentiveness that just feels the emotional affect is surprisingly difficult to find, because the mind keeps getting hijacked by the story. And we have to interrupt this hijacking again and again and again and again. It's not just once, you know. You can't close the cockpit door and lock it. This is why patience is so important, because we have to be endlessly patient with the way the mind is trying to take over the whole situation with this story about why we're so angry. Or why we're so afraid, or, you know, some storyline there. So in the metta practice, we just touch that feeling. We just connect with it. We acknowledge it. And then we just re-incline the mind to metta, no matter what stories are being told. So letting all the storms, you know, and the thunder and lightning happen in the background. And it can be very, very helpful in the metta practice to stop wherever you are, if you're with a difficult person, and to go directly to metta for yourself. You may think this feeds the ego, but it actually doesn't. Or I should say, it doesn't if you use it skillfully. The phrase that's very useful is, may I be at ease with this. Or something like, may I be at ease with things just the way they are. Or may I be at ease anyway. And that word in English, anyway, you know, it comes with this surrender. It's like, this isn't going to change, but may I be at ease anyway. If you can continue the metta practice in this way, then do that. Staying with yourself as long as you need to for the metta then to become established again. And then going back to the difficult person once that happens. If you can't, if it's just too big of a storm, then what's called for is a little bit of vipassana. Just to stay with feeling, with that kind of awareness, and know it exactly as it is. As a physical sensation. Simple, direct, open awareness. Hardness, heat, tension, pressure, vibration, whatever you feel, just know that as a physical sensation. And then also notice if there's something else happening, kind of in the background. Pema Chodron speaks of looking for the soft spot under the anger, that place of vulnerability and fear. And this needs to be a very gentle exploration. Don't dive into it unless you have really strong equanimity. And what may occur in your experience is you touch the anger that's on the surface. If there's a lot of fear underneath, it can come up quite strongly. You know, so you've felt the superficial level, and you go for the soft spot. And you go, oh, what else is happening here? And then all of a sudden, there's this volcano of fear that can come up, or vulnerability. This can be disconcerting, scary, overwhelming, but it helps to know that it's quite common in the practice. If this happens to you, give it a lot of space. This is a time when it helps to pause with the formal practice, open your eyes, just stare into space in a really open, kind way. Just breathe, feel. Connect with the here and now in a neutral way, whatever is happening in your body that might be neutral, or what might be happening in your general or surroundings that are even pleasant. Connect with that. So, go look at the roses, or just listen to the birds. Be really, really gentle with yourself and find a way of modulating the intensity of the experience so you can hold it. Knowing that it has arisen, it will subside. And not making it bigger than it already is. By worrying about it. Oh no, it's like this now. What's it going to be like next week? And understanding in the silence and when there's concentration, even small things can feel huge. Big things can feel even bigger. This is an aspect of retreats we call yogi mind. And if you hit that soft spot and it's really, really overwhelming, yogi mind can make it into, a life crisis that will last for the next 20 years. When in fact, what you're feeling is this natural human vulnerability. We live in a dangerous world. But the mind will magnify it because of the silence, because you're by yourself and you can't do anything with it except feel it. Mm. Here is an example of that. Not from a retreat, but it's a metaphor. I used to be a conservation biologist, and I was in the field working in Hawaii, where I was living and where I'm from, up in the native forest, high in the mountains, and there are these beautiful little spiders that live under leaves. They're teeny, teeny things. They're, maybe half a millimeter at most, legs and all. They're tiny. Or half a centimeter, sorry. And one of these happened to be on my hand one day. And they're the most amazing color of kind of luminous green and red. But the backstory is, at the time, it's gone now thanks to the practice, but I had this very intense spider phobia. But, it was tiny. So I took my hand lens and went, oh, look at the beautiful color. And I put the hand lens up to my eye and I looked at the spider and suddenly it was that big. I screamed. That's what yogi mind does. You take your hand lens of concentration and silence and you look at something and, it totally freaks you out. So try to remember that if something intense is happening in the retreat. Understand that your perspective is magnified. And kilesa, the unwholesome states are magnified. So just hold it and modulate it as best as you can. It may just take going for a walk and, doing something that allows you to be present in the body here and now and allow all of that to subside. Turn your attention to something present in your present moment experience that isn't close to that. And once you can feel that soft spot and feel the anger and really drop into what is there, then it's helpful to notice process level stuff. How is this being built? Again, not going to content, but noticing how the mind picks up physical sensation and amplifies it. Talks about ego, talks about storyline stuff again and again and again. Noticing that experience of stopping the hijacker, having the anger subside, maybe for a moment, and then the mind hijacks the whole situation all over again. Noticing the repetitiveness and the obsessiveness of that. In the Majjhima Nikaya, there's a sutta called The Two Kinds of Thought. And it's a really valuable sutta to read, because the Buddha talks in great length about how we deal with wholesome and unwholesome thoughts, and describes how excessive thinking can be incredibly tiring physically, and how it causes a strain in the mind that leads us far away from concentration. In that sutta, the Buddha says, whatever one thinks and frequently ponders upon, that will become the inclination of one's mind. This, in a nutshell, it's an incredibly important thing to let in. And it describes what we're doing here on this retreat, cultivating metta. And we choose. Am I going to feed this anger and all the thoughts about that, all that obsessive thinking, or do I want to feed the metta? And at first it doesn't feel like a choice, because the mind just naturally goes to its habitual But the more we do this, the more space we have around it, the more choice we have. That's something that we touch and then forget, and touch and then forget again. I mean, it's a natural process in the practice as we're getting better and better at that choice. The more we touch the danger of anger in our experience and the happiness of metta and connection in our experience, the more the mind will naturally begin to incline to the happy part. And the mind may hijack this process a million times. The ego mind might hijack this process a million times. But do we want to be happy or do we want to be miserable? There's a phrase that goes around about, self-righteous anger. It's like, do I want to be free or do I want to be right? And to be honest, sometimes we do want to be right. We don't care about being free. So the Buddha talks in the suttas, uses the metaphor of taming a wild elephant or training a war horse. Both of these animals incredibly powerful, and in the Buddha's time particularly, incredibly valuable. And having trained horses, never elephants, but horses, I find the way the Buddha talks about this so beautiful, because he speaks of how the elephant trainer or the horse trainer will speak sweetly to the elephant or the horse, kindly, gently, understanding the elephant wants to go back to its usual habits, its usual place. So gradually introducing the elephant to the benefits of being tamed. So we're taming the wild mind. We're training the wild mind. This beautiful wild mind, this valuable wild mind. It's a training. There will be resistance, maybe for a long time. This is why patience, patience, patience. Just keep going. So I wanted to close with a beautiful verse from the Dhammapada. Irrigators guide water. Fletchers shape arrows. Carpenters fashion wood. The well-practiced tame themselves. So may we all gently tame these wild minds and attain happiness in this very life. So thank you for